A few weeks ago, I asked you to ask me some questions, and now I'm going to answer them. Duplicate questions will be skipped. Greater Boy 49 asks why Windows XP are the best. XD. I can't personally say it's the best, as I find it to be less interesting than previous Windows versions in some ways. When we first upgraded to Windows XP on a 650MHz AMD K7 Athlon in 2002, I found it to be clunky and bloated, and I didn't like the new theme it boasted. Windows XP did get better with age though. Hyper-threaded Pentium 4 computers handled this operating system very well, and eventually I found myself regularly using its built-in video editor. I think many will agree that without Windows Movie Maker, in spite of its blatant cheesiness, many of us wouldn't have gotten into video editing as much as I have. Kunt asks, what is your opinion of anime? I haven't watched a sufficient amount of anime to provide an educated opinion, but I will say that it's largely uninteresting to me. I don't understand the deal with these anime characters running rampantly across the internet lately. It's kind of annoying. Plus, I find watching anime to be detrimental to my activeness and productivity. I used to binge watch Pokemon and Kirby episodes a lot, but I don't do that anymore because I find I'd rather try creating a video than sit down for at least 20 minutes watching a cartoon. I think the art style of anime is overrated, but at the same time, it can look awesome if it's executed properly. I'm talking about smoothly animated and highly detailed anime. I'd be glad to point you to Paul Johnston's works as an example. He's working on a Street Fighter fan anime, and it looks marvelous. Mika's the Cutie asks, what word describes yourself? Ambitious might be one possibility. If you've watched the 32-bit difference and noticed how much effort I put into that video, you'll know what I mean. I'd honestly rather create a few videos of excessively high quality instead of more videos which only fall on the bar of decent quality. At the same time, I feel I have to stick to that lower bar just to try growing my channel a little more so more people will eventually take notice of my best works. Unfortunately, I'm plagued by my own laziness, but I have been trying to combat that with diet changes and daily biking. It seems to be working a little bit. E for the Redfish Second, one of my favorite commenters, asks, what graphic cards you have tested in brand PCs such like HP Brio, Vectra, Dell Dimension, or Compaq Desk Pro that have worked? I am referring to PCI graphic cards. Seems the HP Brio feels comfortable with an S3 3D Savage around 16 megabytes top model. Never tried games with it. I haven't tried many PCI video cards in brand computers. Some sort of 4 megabyte Cirrus Logic card from 1997 has worked well in my Packard Bell Legend 994 CDT, even in combination with an 8 megabyte STB Blackmagic 3D accelerator. He also asks, how much experience do you have with the AMI BIOS systems? I bought an HP Vectra VE6 350 on eBay, and the AMI BIOS is somehow strange. When plug-and-play enabled, it shows a resource conflict, so I disabled it under Windows 95. It was shipped with 3 hard drives, works perfectly with Windows 3.x, 95 and 98, except the SE version that causes the system to hang sometimes even with forced APM mode, but that was the usual stuff. I am thinking of upgrading the graphic card. From your experience with graphic cards, AGP does work in older P2 systems. It is a P2 350MHz. I want a graphic card that does not require much current, but it should have standard 3dFX and OpenGL support. My first thing after a long time that I bought off eBay. Still, my collection cannot come close to yours. I think there are non-official updates for Windows 98 FE available which runs more stable on my PCs. I just installed Service Pack 1 on it. Where do you get this tools people have written that you can use USB sticks and other peripherals that are normally not supported under Windows 98 FE? In my experience with AMI BIOS, Award BIOS, and Phoenix BIOS systems, the plug-and-play option never seemed to make any difference for my Windows 9X installations. If enabling plug and play causes problems, you might be better off disabling it and manually configuring your hardware if possible. From what I've tested, video cards as late as the NVIDIA FX 5200 work on Pentium 2 systems. I don't know if later cards compatible with 3.3 volt slots will work with such old hardware. Check this video's description for links to the USB mass storage drivers for the first and second editions of Windows 98. Nazar TV Copyright asks, do you speak Russia? I'm Belarusian people. I do not speak Russian. I wanted to learn German in 3rd grade, and then Japanese a couple of years later. I ended up stopping at the part where I memorized the entire katakana table. I'm not sure if I'll get back into it. The knowledge could certainly come in handy, but I find myself wanting to focus on other things instead. Hirasawa Yui asks, what does a whale taste like? The flesh of a whale is pure and benevolent, but eating it tastes like stepping down the stairway to a particular hell designed by the maroon whales of past generations, a place anyone who consumes cetacean meat will go to for a few months. It was originally designed for the Eternal King of Soy's crab army long before the first Homo sapiens came into fruition. Whaling is an act of treason not only upon this planet, but the entire universe as well. Merlin XP asks, when will you make your first webpage online? Certainly not in the near future. I haven't planned the layout of my website yet. If I ever get around to this project, I'll design the website to be compatible with old web browsers. I have too many things planned though. I tend to keep notes of a lot of spontaneous ideas I happen to acquire, but most of them go unused. I might just forget about the website outright in order to make room for more important things. Tonko Vada, Archive. Where did you get ViewSonic CRT? Glory to the Eternal King of Soy. All 3 of my ViewSonic CRTs came from thrift stores. Mr. Netch asks, can you be my mommy? I'm afraid I can't. Homestarboy100 asks, did you ever build a PC? I've built several PCs, starting with a Core 2 Quad Rig in 2009. The computer I used to create my videos is also self-built with encoding speed in mind, as it has a Core i7 3930K CPU installed. This hex-core processor has served me well for 4 years so far. I'm hoping to bring that up to 10. Dio Kasparov asks, where did you get all that tech from? PCs and everything. Some parts came from eBay, others came from thrift stores and garage sales. eBay is good if you're looking for something you know you want, but thrift stores and garage sales tend to be less expensive, assuming you can find something good there. DJ Metaton asks, what OS you usually use? I primarily use Windows 7. Considering that operating system only has 2 years of support left, I might have to find a good alternative editing program for Linux soon, as I absolutely will not upgrade to Windows 10. Pierre99 Francesco asks, why MSN doesn't work? MSN Messenger dead. He also asks, what is your favorite OS, socket, game of all time? My favorite operating systems are Windows 95, 98, and NT 4.0. They're clean and lightweight when compared to newer versions of Windows, and they're pretty fun to use. I don't understand why an operating system should require a minimum of 2 GB of RAM in order to operate smoothly. Although this isn't necessarily a socket, I'd have to go with slot 1 for my favorite socket. I like its design. It makes it really easy to replace the CPU without having to mess with thermal paste repeatedly. I've mentioned earlier that Unreal is a very important game to me, but I'd argue the real champion of video games is this obscure Sunsoft gem called Gimmick. Despite the fact that this game was made for the aging NES, it was quantum leaps ahead of its time, what with its advanced physics engine, strong attention to detail, clever artificial intelligence, and ingenious gameplay mechanics. iMajestics asks, are you a whale? No, I am not. Kuji is a separate character. What am I then? He also asks, what editing software do you use? I mainly use Adobe Premiere Pro CS6, sometimes in collaboration with After Effects, Photoshop, Illustrator, and Audition. Sometimes I'll use Blender as well. Ege Taifasi Yeni Kanal asks, will 2.5 billion P politics is makeable? That's not something I plan to make. I've teased 3D VR politics, which I've thought of as either a 3D or 360-degree political news report, or even both if possible. I don't think that will happen either. Anav Bhat asks, what is the best computer in your opinion? My primary computer I mentioned earlier is really good, but if we're talking old computers here, I think the one which houses my Asus P2B LS motherboard is my favorite so far. Uke Alt asks, how do you do? I wonder about that. Nobody ever answered this question in any of the Finger Family videos. The greatest mystery of our generation. Cap Pictures Inc. asks, do the 240p politics videos follow a timeline? Not necessarily. Whatever 240p politics happens to report runs independently of the Death Ibex lore, but both are still connected nonetheless. Extra Sklep the Maroon Bass asks, what is a question? A question is a deliberately vague answer to a question. He also asks, can you please make hardcore Windows Longhorn? I will not make hardcore Windows Longhorn. Any hardware and software beyond the year 2000 tends to fall out of my scope of interest. Pajama Fricks asks, hi, to which I respond, Escargot is a great revival of MSF Messenger. Emerald D asks, why not 1080p politics? Nobody has the bandwidth for that in 2002, but 30,000p streaming should be widely available by next year. RetroPL asks, why are you interested in fishing? I am not, actually. I just think fish are cute and underrated. They deserve better than fishing hooks and terrible puns. Nicholas Nakashima asks, will you make hardcore Linux just as stupid as Windows XP M:? As stated previously, I'm not going to make another hardcore series, but I've thought of making a video about an old version of Linux at some point. I happen to have a boxed copy of Red Hat 5.2, but I never got around to setting it up for a video. JHJ22 asks, how to make Windows 98 Infinite? Take a stock photo of a beach, put some vaporwavy coloring over it, slap a Windows logo over it, go to Bing to translate your desired text to Japanese, and slap a dolphin GIF on there for a surefire infinite Windows 98 experience. Firelord Unity asks, will you ever do hardcore Gentoo GNU Linux? Will you also do an hardcore Gentoo GNU Linux install if you ever get around on doing an hardcore Gentoo GNU Linux video? Gentoo Linux is far out of my scope of interest at this time. It's really not worth the time to install. Windows XP asks, how many retro computers do you have? I'd estimate around 20 or so, and I intend to grow that number in the future. SuperGame699 asks, how to Apple? Lettuce. Ikedi Agifes Ozoy asks, why Bass doesn't use Windows XP? The Bass does not have any interest in upgrading to a later operating system. He finds Windows 95 works very reliably and is better than Windows XP due to the fact that it consumes much less background resources and has a very clean interface. That's the Bass's thoughts, not necessarily mine. Even though they are. Guy Swagger asks, how's the Eternal King of Soy doing? Nobody knows that, but that doesn't stop some people from thinking they know exactly what he wants. Some crazy people regularly use the Eternal King of Soy to justify their crimes against whales. Taylor Ivy asks, can you install Windows XP on the Windows 98 computer? I already did that. Twice. Bapgumbolify asks, will you pay tribute to AOL Instant Messenger? Paying tribute to spyware is not allowed in Maroon Whale Land. Ryan Dettle asks 2 questions. Can you pin me? Lol. And when you doing your next bass video? I don't pin messages on request. I do have a 3rd bass video planned, but I haven't started working on it yet. I might have to wait until next year. Thugmaster asks, how do I gain more swag? For get more swag, what you is need are the purple drag sponsored by Grimace from Sesame Street, and high amount of clout and a rich.